And we are live. New intro video and all. Thank you very much, Alice. So I'm joined today with Peyman and Askari. We're going to try something a little new, pretty much an informal morning episode. Today we're gonna start with talking about the Democrats and their new all-star and the younger crop like Mom Dami, and they're just blatantly embracing socialism at this point. So with that said, Peyman, what are your general thoughts on this?
Michael Jones, he put out a post and he said that communism is the pus when capitalism becomes diseased. So on our side, we're always saying like communism has never worked. It always fails. It always has a worse outcome. Well, capitalism, from their perspective, it's also not worked. I mean, it's led to the centralization of wealth. Look what happened in 2008. And at least Mamdani is giving some sort of solution, some sort of hope. The right's not doing that. The right's just like, oh, well, let's just ignore what's going on. And I'm worried that if they continue like this, people like Mamdani and his social democrats are going to grow like a cancer.
100%. It's appealing to the youth who are tired of all the platitudes. They're tired of all the stuff, all the drama. They just kind of want to see some solutions. And for a lot of people that don't understand some of the problems with socialism, like our politically illiterate electorate, it's very appealing to them. It's also like the reflexivity aspect of it too. Like it's kind of there's the conservative, the MAGA sort, and it's like almost like it's coming back. I seen this when MAGA initiated, and it just makes me think of how I see it virtually as synthetic. It's just they're manipulating us back and forth. The people that are in the center anyway.
Some Democrat woman, like a Democrat supporter in the U.S., she was criticizing Trump for his State of the Union address, which I didn't really watch, but I guess at some point he called the left crazy, which I think they are. But that's not the point. From the left's perspective, that's like when Biden called the entire right fascists, right? So you're creating this division. And again, I think what Biden did is much worse. But it's making it harder for us to make actual reform. Like I really believe on the right, we need to propose land reform. We need to give the youth land, give them agency, give them the ability to live on their own without having to suckle at the teat of government.
And the right now is so like it's almost like the free market is worshipped on the right. So it's like the thought of interfering with that in any capacity, even though like what we have now, and you said the Michael E. Jones quote about communism being the pus when capitalism goes bad or gets infected. It's not capitalism. We haven't had capitalism in a very, very long time. It'd be polite to say crony capitalism. I frequently go as far as neo-feudalism. There's a massive elite, like the middle class is virtually non-existent. Upward mobility to like improve your lot is just that used to be the American dream, right? To work hard and get ahead. And that's just long gone, right? And people are bitter from it. And that's when radical things like socialism or other things start to become more appealing to the electorate.
I agree with you. You can't even use these words anymore. I say these words have been molested, like capitalism. It doesn't mean anything. I'm an immigrant. I came to Canada as a child. Based on what I remember and talking to immigrants who came to Canada as an adult, you come to the West for two reasons. The first one is economic prosperity, and the second one is the rule of law. And I think Canada has it just destroyed economic prosperity. Like you can't build a house in Canada as an immigrant, just a simple house. There's too many regulations. That was the first one to go. And the second one, the rule of law, that's recently been destroyed as well. Like there is no rule of law. You go to these tribunals and you're guilty until proven further guilty.
100%. We're seeing in real time the weaponization of the Canadian legal system to enforce a political orthodoxy, right? Like that's totalitarianism. And there's also the aspect that the rule of law has gone on the basic level too, because it's almost akin to what they call anarcho-tyranny. Crime has never been this high. We have police chiefs of major cities going on news programs and suggesting that people just leave their keys by the door. So in case someone wants to come in to steal their car, It's as absurd or as ludicrous as suggesting you should have a sandwich prepared or leave some cookies and milk out for the guy that's coming to do a home invasion. That's where we're at. It's nuts.
Bruce Party defined anarcho-tyranny in a way that I could understand. He said violent criminals are being let go, so rapists, murderers, but then political opponents of the politicians are being thrown in jail for hate speech. That's how he defined anarcho-tyranny. Do you define it differently?
No, that's there's different aspects of it. That's very reminiscent of a Solzhenitsyn quote, whereas you could tell a communist society because they criminalize the political opponents and let the criminals walk the streets. Now I'm paraphrasing it, but that's essentially it. And yeah, that is it. When I think of anarcho-tyranny, I contextualize it in the sense that I think of it in this problem, reaction, solution dialectic, this pattern we frequently see. Like if you want your electorate to go a certain way, you're tyrannizing them. And that's the tyranny part of it. And how do you do it? Well, with anarchy, you forego the rule of law. You release the violent criminals. You create this climate of tension, and then they're more pliable or malleable to be swayed in a certain way politically if there's a solution attached, right?
Matt, I am reminded of a guest we had on PST, Chelsea Hillier, who I think she one-upped her dad. Her dad said that the tribunals, they have structural weaknesses, structural flaws. And she's like, there is no justice in Canada. Even if you want to get justice through the actual legal system, the courts, the legitimate courts, you're going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's going to take several years of your life. Your lawyers won't help you. So you have to go pro se, self-represented. And then you get to the end, and then some crooked judge, some corrupt political lackey will just rule against you.
Yeah, I agree. And people will frequently say, oh, that's a black pill. It's like, look, man, it's a hard time right now. And if you're endeavoring to describe it, there's some black pills. Like our country is in a very wrong way. And I feel very similar to Chelsea as someone who's from the working class. Like I'm a couple of paychecks away from poverty. What am I going to do? How am I going to be represented in the legal system? At the same time, I make too much to qualify for any type of socialist legal counsel. Like I wouldn't qualify for their programs to have a lawyer provide it. So I would be in a situation where I would represent myself. And if that ever happens, just know, government, I'm going to make a spectacle of it. I'm pretty good.
They're like straight to jail. Throw your ass right in jail. Another guest that we have, and do you remember Derek Sloan? He came on.
Yes, of course.
So when you say people say that we're blackpilling them, I get that a lot, and people say you got to be more positive. I'm working on it. I got to get some pharmaceutical drugs to help with that. But within all those black pills, you do get finally some wisdom comes through. And Derek Sloan, he said, we made a mistake basing our entire way of life on this concept of GDP and like infinite growth. So when you say crony capitalism, we've leaned into this concept of consumerism, where the purpose of life is to earn a salary, pay your portion of taxes, and then whatever's left over, you just buy useless Chinese-made crap.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's not just a problem with policies. Policies and politics, like we frequently quote Gramsci, is downstream of culture. And the culture in the West, it's a consumerist culture. The greed is put on a pedestal, like it's accepted. Like, oh, our system is so good that you could be greedy. It doesn't matter. It's like, well, no, I think it matters. And I think we're seeing the ramifications societally of that type of a consumer culture.
Yeah, and another thing about our consumer culture, when was the last time you saw scarcity? Like, I don't know, think of like that Seinfeld episode, the Mackinac peaches, they're only available for like 1 week a year. When was the last time you went to the grocery store? There were no watermelons, there were no peaches, there were no pears, there were no apricots. Like we have no concept of life, in my opinion. Like the government is giving us access to everything, and in return, we're giving up our decision-making capabilities.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. I mean, really, our grocery stores should be local local produce. So you would have the fruits that are available to your region when they're in season. You'd have preserves other times of the year. But it's just a matter of decentralizing. Centralization of the markets, globalization in and of itself, especially post World War II globalization, it did bring a prosperity to countries. Our governments then seemingly, or the effect it had maybe even by default, was this infantilization. We don't live in the real world at all. Like there's young people that truly believe food comes from the grocery store. And they're so economically illiterate and they don't understand markets. They don't understand any of that. And these are the kids that have these like passionate political views and they don't know shit from good chocolate in my estimation.
Imagine if we didn't have government, like how well would you survive? I've gone hunting once or twice, but I'm not the best at like killing my prey and skinning it, preserving it. I don't really know how to fish. Foraging, I'd probably end up eating some poisonous berries or mushrooms. Do you have any of those life skills?
I personally do not. I have a lot of friends that are like, I wouldn't say survivalist types, but they hunt and they fish. They would have the best chance of surviving if something went wrong. But no, and furthermore, Peyman, I think that these values were something that were taught generationally since the beginning of mankind. And I think we're a couple generations into the point now where they haven't been passed on and none of us have these skills. Even how to preserve food, that's a huge one. You have to preserve what you have. You can't like even meat and stuff like it. There was ways to do it without electricity, salting it, smoking it. All of these things were initially preservation methods. But we're infantilized in the West. And here's what I've been thinking. I've mentioned this to you before, but it's like we grew up thinking that we're not just the civilized world, we're the peak pinnacle of civilization, and we're in the free world, and we have all of these rights and all of this freedom and prosperity. And once the prosperity went away, we started to see where the freedom really lies. And it's an illusion in my estimation.
That's where I was going with this illusion thing. So preserving, presumably there's a way to make vinegar. I think you just like grape juice go bad. That's a preservative. Salt. I don't know, how do you get salt? Like you can go in a mine. I'm sure you can get it from the ocean. But if you said, Peyman, if you can get some salt, I'll give you $1 million. I don't think I could win that bet. But so we've foregone that generational knowledge that used to get passed down, and instead the parents said, Jimmy, you go off and you get a software development degree. And they go and get that. And then the government rolls out this thing called AI. And now those people, they're hopelessly dependent on a government that screwed them.
The dependency is the biggest aspect of all of this. And that's where the problem is like as much as I am critical of our system, I'm entirely reliant and dependent upon it. If it crumbles tomorrow, like what do I do? Right. So it's important to not, to realize that we need to reform this in some way. We definitely need to get back to basics, but we're not going to go back to that type of a culture where we're preserving and hunting. And I don't think that that's scalable. I don't think that would work presently with the amount of people, but we definitely require some reform, especially in the realm of education.
I mean, to bring it back to Mamdani, I think the two of us, were saying the same thing that Mamdani and co are saying. We need reform, but I'll speak for myself. I want reform that favors the individual. Mamdani wants reform that favors the state. That's where I see the difference between whatever you want to call it, collectivists and individualists.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we need to bridge the gap somehow. Like, I think number one, I think charitable foundations would arise right away. If we eradicated taxation for the most part, like the majority of taxation, if we trimmed it as much as we could, people would have a lot extra, and we would understand the social responsibility. Plus, it's mutually beneficial. Like you can't just like there's some people that aren't going to function in whatever society we build. And we can't just let them have a shanty town. Like prior to welfare reforms, when you look at New York, they had the 5 Points district. Every major urban area had a cesspool in the middle where crime and disease was concentrated. So that's why a lot of these programs were initiated. It was to you don't want to live with that. Something needs to be done. But I don't think the state or centralizing these bodies is a good thing. I think it was better when charities were the primary source of helping people.
Yeah, the Bible, how they don't actually come out and say anything. They always tell everything in riddles and rhymes and stories. And at first, I thought that was just ridiculous, but I think that's how you have to get through to people. You can't get through logic. Nowadays, that's why I always use analogies. I'll give you an example. I'm writing a piece of software right now, and I know the chances of monetizing it are low. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money and investment, but I do it because it makes me feel worthwhile. I don't want the government to come in and build it for me and say, "Here we go, Comrade Peyman, you can use this service for free." It's something about having value in life that comes from doing work.
Absolutely. And the gratification of creation. Like when you create something, and a lot of people in the like in various industries, they don't get that anymore. So there's a detachment, right? And it really has a problem with the meaning in their life. Like they feel they're replaceable. I agree entirely with that.
Yeah. You heard about Jason James was telling me that Carney's coming up with a sovereign wealth fund proposal, 200 million. Did you?
Oh yeah.
3 billion.
Yeah. So it's outrageous. Everyone knows a sovereign wealth fund is generally with a surplus. You know what I mean? That's what goes into it, and then it's utilized for national projects or whatever, things that would benefit the nation. But he's desperate, and he needs money for the infrastructure that he wants to build so we can survive this. So Canada can stay intact and survive the new world, which is globalization, free trade as we known it is going to be reworked, especially with the CUSMA renegotiations. The way Carney's leaning, and he was the whole time, is that we don't want to be reliant on America and we're going to build our own infrastructure. So how do you do that when you're immensely in debt? Well, you create more debt. It's the only way. He's betting the farm, so to speak.
Yeah, it's the gambler's dilemma, constantly going to more debt. It's just absurdity on top of absurdity. So a sovereign wealth fund is like CPP expanded to not just be for when you're retiring. But as you mentioned, it somewhat makes sense when you have an excess of money. Like if you hit a gusher in an oil field somewhere and you don't want to squander it on hookers and cocaine, you put it in the sovereign wealth fund. Mm-hmm. But he's borrowing money to put into a sovereign wealth fund. It's a high risk game.
Well, I mean, we're selling our children. We're selling future generations into debt slavery, the Ponzi scheme that is our present system. And that's what it is, in my estimation. Fiat currency, the way it's been inflated, all of the countries in the West are in debt. Who are they in debt to? The Iron Bank? Essentially, yeah. You know what I mean? That's pretty much how it works. And like, economics scares a lot of people, and I have a very rudimentary understanding of economics. But I mean, essentially, like we've got an elite class that create wealth out of thin air and loan it to our countries at an interest rate. The rest of us are sold or securitized for this debt. It's based on GDP growth, and that I think this is one of the reasons we're seeing the mass migration into Western economies, because they're scrambling. The Ponzi scheme is coming to an end, and they're trying to feed it new people, right?
My God, there's a lot in there, and you're spot on. It is the securitization, it is the debt, it is the Iron Bank, but they've entered. It's just really sinister. They've entered into this conspiracy, the state and the banks, to trick us into the state has tricked us into letting them take a slice of our pie, taxing our labor. And then they turn around and they give that pie to the banks, who take a slice off of that pie, and then they give a piece of that pie back to us. Like it's not necessary. We don't need those banks. You can have a sovereign bank that doesn't give interest loans. You don't have to print money, and you sure as shit shouldn't let them tax your labor.
Yeah, and I don't think we need socialism to fix this. I just think we need minor tweaks. Like I really do. We need to incentivize productivity. So the biggest problem with socialist economies is it stagnates productivity. So we need a mechanism that necessitates productivity in any given country. And I mean, but we should still at the same time have certain services and stuff. Like I used to be one of those, like Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, the free market is God. You know what I mean? Like we must make sure it's free. It's like, no, man, this market is to facilitate society. It's to serve society. It's to serve man, not the other way around. And I definitely think a lot of my views personally have been changing on that. I think we need massive reform, and I don't know. I have a conversation set up with Andre Maloche, and I forget the individual's name. He's a he's a doctor.
Oh, the social credit guy.
Yes, yeah, on Douglas social credit system. Now, I've been learning. I've been watching some videos just to prepare myself for the conversation. I invited Andre on because he's more familiar with it. And we're going to have a discussion, but these are some of the things I'm looking to explore. Like what do we want? Like how can we move forward? What's the most pragmatic or practical solution from our current situation? And these are the kind of conversations I'm enticed to have, we'll say.
So social credit, that is one of the more sane voices in the room. And briefly for the audience, I don't really fully understand it either, but they look at the money creation system. So they print $100, they give you $100 loan, and you have to give them back $110. That's $10 that you'll like. It doesn't exist until you borrow another $10. So what they're saying is the government's role is at the end of the year, they step in and they print that money interest free, and they, I guess, give it to you to pay back the banks. To me, it's just another way of having a sovereign national state bank, but it is at least one good solution.
It's intriguing, that's for sure. And this is what we need. We need to tone down the rhetoric. It's man, the polarization levels are wild. You've got really smart, decent people that want to kill people on the other side. Like the hatred, the vitriol. That's all you see. And you go on these social media sites, and that's seemingly all you see. And you start to realize, like, well, how relevant is this? Like, are we really each other's biggest enemy, or is it this system that just has some major flaws? And I think it's the latter. I really don't think it's super relevant, this culture war.
If you want to take the temperature down, this word we're using, socialism. So if there's anyone on the left that's watching this, obviously it happens on the left. Universal healthcare is one socialist approach. Canada Pension Plan is another one. Public education is the third one. It happens on the right as well. You got this massive military. If you talk to military guys, they're more socialist than the left. And the other one is the surveillance state. It's just you're taking people's money and spending it on this police state.
Yeah, and just like the whole differentiation between fascism and communism, as we've seen in the 20th century, which is virtually not real. It's just a semantical difference. You have a small group in charge. It's just different reasoning with the same outcome. And you look at the National Socialists of Germany, the Nazis, like they were socialists. They had they actually had some really intriguing policies, domestic policies. I know you can't say that they had anything good. It's like life's very complicated. There's not black and whites. There's generally shades of gray. That's my more nuanced interpretation of it. But they had policies of natalism where if you had 3 or 4 children, you had a house for free. I think it was exactly like you were given a house if you were married, if you legally got married. And the mortgage was in your name. The house was in your name. The state didn't maintain ownership. It was your property. And then every child you had, 25% of the debt went away. So if you got married and had 4 children, you had a home bought and paid for. That's your home. It's your property. That's very intriguing to me. These are the type of novel things I think we really have to look at in order to fix the looming crises that are on our horizon.
If you look at the U.S. and compare it with Canada, in America, they took most of the land, not all of it, but they took most of it and they just privatized it. They said to the people, go forth and be free. Canada, they gave none of the land to the people, but in trickles, as people were born, they're like, all right, you want a piece of land? We'll give you a piece of land. I wonder how Hitler did that. Like that land that he gifted to people for having children. I wonder where that came from. I wonder if it was like the Canadian model.
That's a good question. That's a good question because obviously if you're giving land out, it came from somewhere. So who lost the land?
I
Um,
wonder, could it possibly be one set of people that had a specific religion and the land got confiscated?
it's very complicated. I'm delving into this more. I used to think I had a pretty good general understanding of World War II. When I was younger, I used to love all the documentaries. I read a few history books regarding it, but there's competing narratives now. And I wouldn't say it's revisionist. I think it's reanalyzing it and trying to have a little more nuance as opposed to Hitler was the devil and Germany went nuts. One of the most powerful, productive nations on earth just suddenly went crazy and became wanted to kill and target an ethnic group or anyone who deviates from their pure model. And I think it's way more complicated than that. I think banking plays into it, but I'm doing the Martyr Maid series, the German War. There's only 2 episodes of that, so I ran out of material. So now I'm reading a Pat Buchanan book presently about Churchill and Hitler. But you got to understand the dynamic after in the Weimar Republic when they signed the Versailles Treaty after World War I, like it created the worst climate imaginable in Germany. And you had like communists. They just watched the revolution happen in Russia, the Bolsheviks, and they had this thing called Sparta. People don't understand this. There was a very powerful communist group in post-World War I Germany called Sparta. And people really thought that they were going to overthrow Germany. So then you have, again, the climate for this reflexivity. Oh, there's all these communists there. You see the fascists emerge, right, as the opposition. And I continuously see these patterns when I'm reading history. And I don't know if it's people hacking humanity behind the scenes and playing these scenarios out, or it's just the natural order of things. When you think of complex systems theory, is this just how people work societally? Like, is this an inevitability?
I don't really know too much about the social aspect of Hitler. That's why I don't like talking about it. I look at the economic aspect, and I had a back and forth with ChatGPT because Hitler was, was printing money and paying people a salary, but he wasn't paying interest on that money because he was the bank. And I was like, ChatGPT, that doesn't make sense. Like something's got to give. And ChatGPT's like, yeah, essentially the end result is war. Like it created a massive bubble, and the only way to solve it was to invade another country and steal their land and cheap labor.
Well, he actually stole gold reserves too. When he went into Czechoslovakia, he got their gold reserves, which helped fund his bank.
No. You're thinking of George Bush and Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, but it's no, it's complicated, man. And this generation now, it's not too soon anymore, right? Like the mythos of the West and Martyr Maid. Daryl Cooper points this out frequently. Like we're so secular. Western modernity is such a secular culture that when you're looking for a euphemism for evil, you don't even think Lucifer or Satan. You think Hitler. When you're thinking of a group that's really bad, you don't call them demons. You're not in that realm anymore. You're in secularism now. You're Nazis. So it had it's part of the mythos that we're seeing play out. And I think the new generation, especially the younger people, are really questioning all of these things, man, because I think somewhere along the line we were wrong on some of our conceptions.
Yeah, the sting of Nazism is going away with the youth because why should they care about some guy 90 years ago when their own leaders are stealing their money as early as 2008? And you saw this play out in the invasion of Iran, where it almost, for a short, brief period, IRGC was the new Nazi. Like they tried to make that a real thing, and it did work for a while.
Everyone is. And if you don't, you're appeasing and you're Chamberlain. Like, you know what I mean? You're Chamberlain. You didn't see you're not Churchill, you're Chamberlain. And that's what's used in geopolitically to rationalize every war. Saddam Hussein was Hitler. Gaddafi was Hitler. Now the Iranians are Hitler. Like it's the same shit. And I think it comes from a lot of flaws of our interpretation of World War II. And could it have been avoided? Could it have been avoided? You're not allowed to say that. That's what Daryl Cooper said that created a lot of controversy. But I think Winston Churchill had a lot to play in this. And I've read several works that indicate that rather rather compellingly, I'll say. Not conclusively, but it's very compelling.
After this Iran debacle, where I think I listened a little too much to anti-Iran war analysts, I'm going back and I'm listening to people on the left, but also people further on the right. Do you know a guy named Victor Davis Hanson?
Of course, yeah, I read his last book, The Dying Citizen.
So he's a pretty hardcore neocon, Christian conservative, and he's got some interesting views on World War II. You don't have to agree with him, but like he justifies the bombing of the nuking of Japan, saying if they hadn't done that, Curtis LeMay, who was this genius strategist, would have gone in and would have killed 2 million people. He gets very angry at revisionist historians, which is what he calls Daryl Cooper, for daring to suggest that Winston Churchill was the bad guy.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, Pat Buchanan, who was a famous American political figure, he wrote that book that I'm reading presently, Churchill, Hitler, and the Forgotten War. So it's something along that line. I'm terrible with titles, but Daryl Cooper is certainly not the first to indicate that. And I think if there wasn't such a cultural deterrent, I think a lot of other historians would have looked into some more of the nuance, like look at it from Germany's perspective. Number one, you can't understand World War II until you understand World War I, and you can't understand World War I until you understand all of these massive empires, all of these big dynasties that were falling. Like we seen the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Was Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination that sparked it. A lot of people said the Versailles Treaty was more of an armistice. Like it was a peace deal that lasted 20 years. The two wars are so interconnected, the causational factors, it's very intriguing. Now, Victor Davis Hanson is Hoover Institute. He's an Ivy League educated military historian. I respect his opinion on a lot of things, but I don't trust his opinion when it comes to Israel and neoconservatism, because he seems to sway a little bit that way. Go back and read some of the compelling op-eds that he wrote in favor of the Iraq War, in favor of overthrowing Gaddafi, who I can't see a justification for that. Everything I've learned about Gaddafi is he was a really good man. His only problem that he made is he wanted to make his own currency based on gold and kick the banks out. Yeah.
Just like looking at his work objectively, I'm listening to his arguments. So he gave an argument in support of the torture of the prisoners during the Iraq War. He said something to the effect of, yeah, but it wasn't really torture. It was just sexual in nature. I get what he's saying. It's not like they were hacking off body parts. With regard to Israel stealing Palestinian lands, he goes, I don't understand why everyone is so upset. It's been so long. Germany lost way more land. I get where he's coming from. Like he makes arguments that aren't ass backward like these pundits on Fox News or CNN. But I don't know. I can't agree with them fully.
I don't. And the biggest thing for me and realizing this really rocked my world, because I respected a lot of these academics and I lost a lot of respect for them. People like Victor Davis Hanson, Douglas Murray would be another one. I read everything he's ever wrote, and then I seen a post of his where he's calling for censorship. These right-wing conspiracy theorists have to be censored. This is crazy. It's like, man, it's just wild to me. And clearly these people have motivations that we can't see. There's motives that we're unaware of, and that's what's guiding a lot of their work. And once you really get that, you could start to put together a coherent framing for what's going on. You could start to see some of the various factions that are vying for influence presently.
A perfect example is Noam Chomsky. I mean, going through university, I was a leftist, and I clung to every word he said. And I remember when he said, they asked him to define terrorism, and he goes, "It's easy. When they do it, it's terrorism. When we do it, it's counterterrorism." And he said you can find that in the Nazi archives. Fast forward to COVID, and he's talking about how people should be jailed for not taking the vaccine. And the mask, it kind of slips off, and you realize at some point, you as an individual, you have to grow up, you have to be your own man, and you have to pursue what you believe is the right path. You can't listen to anyone else.
Absolutely. You should take everyone. There's grains of wisdom. You have to get really good at separating the wheat from the chaff. and taking the grains of wisdom and not taking the overarching worldview that they might be wanting to push you towards. You have your discernment needs refinement in this culture. But Noam Chomsky, like I really liked him too. Manufacturing consent, that premise relative to like social engineering and societal engineering, like I really respected his work. It wasn't just his response to COVID. He was also very mixed up with the Epstein files. I mean, it's like after like this guy was charged with molesting children, he was like sending him emails like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Jeffrey. I'm so sorry for what happened." It's like, what the fuck is going on? Pardon my vulgarity. Right quick, before we continue, I'm enjoying the conversation so much I forgot we were live. We got only about 50 people watching. It's a new time slot for us for sure. But if I could appeal to anyone watching, if you guys could please share the stream, it's very advantageous for us.
Do you want to keep going, or do we have questions?
We have a couple of questions. Sure. Let's have a look at that. Good thinking. So we got Peggy on a two-parter. We have the family dead from the king. We were given acreage with the expectation we would care for and develop the property. It gives fishing, farming, mining, forestry rights. The fee was 2 cents. It's multi-parts. 2 cents a year in taxes to the king. I think Republicans can't address the subversion of Israel by Russian, Ukrainian Jews. I don't know if these are coming in the proper order.
Sorry, she was talking about a family deed, I think.
Initially, yes.
Yeah, so we have the family deed from the king. We were given acreage with the expectation we would carry. She's talking about feudalism. Somewhere along the way, like you went from feudalism to the Industrial Revolution, and then there was the promise of liberty. But I think the central bankers just started gobbling up all the land. So feudalism, it kind of worked up until a point. That feudalism is like communism. The state owns the land, but lets you live on it, so you have dignity. I just wish there must be a different way where you distribute ownership of land and you let people be free, while the state just makes sure that you can continue to be free. That should be the only purpose of the state.
I agree with that entirely. And I think we're so conditioned to believe that we require these big government apparatuses that we can't even comprehend the premise of things existing more in the private sphere with personal ownership. But I think property rights are foundational to anything moving forward. And a lot of people don't share that now, right? I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, what is ownership? How do you own it?" And they're getting into really like arbitrary conceptions of it. And it's like, look, man, like if we don't have that, it's I think we're in a bad spot.
Yeah, I want to switch over to the Elizabeth Nixon book, Eco-Fascist, because it's specifically about property rights. She writes Absurdistan on Substack, but read her book. She talks about this. She had 15 acres of land and she wanted to subdivide it. The law allows her to subdivide it into 2 homes. And she went through the legal path, and she would go to these town hall meetings, and some guy in a ponytail or some woman who was divorced, and she made it her mission to use her husband's money or her dad's money to pursue these green agendas. They would always stifle her. And she's painting this picture of this small activist group. She lives on Salt Spring Island, Vancouver Island. There's just a collective group of hippies who think, man is a cancer across the land. And they have completely destroyed property rights. She bought an acreage thinking that she could live there and be free from government, but government's long hand just reached in and shattered that dream.
Yeah. It's pretty disparaging, really, the directions we're going. The directions we're being swayed. That seems more localized, her situation, but I mean we're seeing it with UNDRIP. We're seeing land expropriation. Like most people, I think most rational people, maybe I'm biased because I lean this way, but most rational people merely want that. They want a little piece of the world that they can own, where they're the king or the queen, and they're in charge, and their family can live there, and they don't have to worry about the rest of the world. And that's what's slipping away. And I don't think people realize what we derive from that. And I think once that goes, you will, right? You're just some unrecognizable shade of totalitarianism when property rights are eroded to that extent.
I'm often speaking to anybody that wants to chart a political path that we need land reform. You have people, the youth are saying that the dream of home ownership, land ownership is gone. It's not accessible to me. And then you have the state that's taking people off the land, blocking off the land, packing them into cities. Essentially, they're decreasing supply by like making it impossible, like taking land off the market, and they're increasing the price of land. They're increasing the taxes on property taxes on land. The youth are literally voting people that are harming them by destroying their chances of owning land.
Yeah, and this is the thing. It's not like there's a viable alternative to this, though. It's not like, you know what I mean? You could just in this dual party system that's dominant in every Western country. I mean, there's not really anyone who provides a true alternative. These things, like, it's mostly superfluous things they could change, more basic policies. Like, they can't reform a country. Like, and that's what we require. We require massive reforming, or we're going to lose it all. Like, and it's going to go into some radicalized leftist or rightist direction, like, which virtually ends up at the same spot. And again, it's totalitarianism. I think the biggest hindrance to presently to realizing this is the education level of the electorate. I'm starting to think democracy is inevitably and perpetually going to be exploited by an oligarchical class. I think it's the design of it. It's like universal suffrage. When people used to say that, I would cringe. But now I'm leaning that way, man. Like, the vast majority of people should not be voting. Why? Because they have no conception of the problems, not even a rudimentary understanding of things.
Let me give you some hope from despair. They 4 committee meetings this week went into in camera, so they didn't want the news to come out. And when it goes into in camera, the CBC has nothing to report on. And eventually, at some point down the road, what's going to hit the fan. And when things blow up, the people are going to turn to CBC, be like, you were supposed to be the watchdog. And CBC is going to be like, they're between a rock and a hard place. They're the propaganda arm of the government, but the government is not being transparent. And eventually, out of all of that chaos and destruction, the people will hopefully turn on the government. So I hope that Mark Carney keeps going down this path to eventually indirectly save us.
It could be accelerationism, right? Like, let's just get it done. Like when people would joke and say, vote the NDP in. But I agree, man. The significance of the media in any type of democratic system cannot be understated. It's considered a foundational pillar. The fourth estate, they have an obligation to condense the complexity of these policies and present the electorate with a digestible summation. So, to put that in English, like, they got to dumb it down a little bit and explain it to the people in a novel way so they understand what's at stake. And it's so over intellectualized. It's so convoluted with fancy lingo and language. It's like they got to realize who they're talking to, and they don't. Again, like, presently, it's just it's Pravda, it's state media, and that's what it is. It's there to provide the illusion of participatory governance.
It's absolutely Pravda. It's so fake. After watching something like what you and I are doing, which is just unscripted, organic, you watch the CBC, they bring it on the surface. It looks like they're bringing two sides to the debate, but both of those people, you're like, I've never seen people like that ever in my entire life. Like, these are artificial constructs.
And that's I mentioned this a lot, but it's worth repeating. And that's the biggest benefit for them with the controlled opposition, like controlling both sides, is that allows them to set the parameters for acceptable discourse. All of the good ideas lie outside of their synthetic parameterized framings for everything, right? And, like, we can't get there because you're dismissed right away. And they have such a stranglehold on these media apparatuses, on social media. The push for censorship now is phenomenal. We got to mention that briefly. Like, the last few weeks, it's kicked into overdrive. Even in America, they're saying now we got to stop the radical leftists. They're dangerous. So, like, what Starmer is accomplishing, Keir Starmer in the UK, by blaming the far right extremists, we can't let the far right extremists make social media posts Trump is attempting the exact same strategy by vilifying the far leftists. It's like people got to start putting this together and realize what's happening right now.
Yeah, in the U.S., after the assassination attempt, I think Joe Kent, former CIA agent, he came out and he said, in a free society like the U.S., all of these, Discord server groups, they're recruitment grounds for far right terrorist organizations or criminal organizations. Well, the outcome of comments like that is basically we need censorship like they have in Canada.
Yeah. They want it normalized. They wanted people to accept it, and that's what they're using. Oh, they're throwing the kitchen sink at this, man. Every article I see coming out of Canadian media outlets, which are heavily state subsidized, if not entirely state funded, is these things like, oh, these children are making an appeal for internet safety. They want to be protected from online harms. These mothers groups, yeah, we want the internet to be regulated. It's just phenomenal. And if you're awake to this and you're seeing it, you see it for how pernicious it is, but it's very disconcerting, man. Like, it scares me. It gives me the creeps when I see this, because I think of how many people, the vast majority of our electorate, are reading this trash and probably agreeing with parts, maybe being hesitant, but I mean, they're even entertaining it. It's like, this is fucking ludicrous. Again, I apologize for the vulgarity.
Let's try to figure out how this happened. Like, how did we get to a point where our elected officials are so different from everyone else in Canada? As bad as the electorate is, they don't really want censorship if you explained it to them. I think in '68, we made a deal with the devil. We said to Pierre Trudeau and the liberals that rule this country, you give us stability, you give us ease of comfort, you give us the luxuries of life, and we'll hand over the reins of government. From '68 till today, you got this activist class that I think is completely like taking over everything. They're running roughshod now. Like Rachel Bendayon, she's gleeful. Who's our attorney general? Mark Miller. Like he comes
Sean Fraser.
Whatever, they all look the same.
Yeah,
they're interchangeable. They're moving them around like it's magic musical chairs, and they come out and they say the most absurd things, and I think they believe it. It's this activist class that's taken over the government.
It's the whole Fabian Socialist Club of Rome correlations too with Pierre Trudeau. Like, he was the one that sparked a lot of this. This is when you started to see the change, the deindustrialization, the environmentalism, the multiculturalism, which is just a ludicrous concept. You can have a multiracial country. Look at Iran. It's been a country for a couple of thousand years, and there's various races that are there. But you can't really have a multicultural society. It doesn't make sense. It becomes the cultural malaise is the cultural distinction kind of it's created in the peoples that live there. I just always thought multiculturalism was such a loaded concept, but this was introduced by Pierre Trudeau. I don't think it was just relative to well-meaning activist class, like a class of wealthy activists. I think it was a concerted effort from organizations and NGOs behind the scenes. We won't get into all that today, but that's my conception of it. But you're right.
On multiculturalism, like Iran has multiple cultures, but that's because Iran federated different regions. It was never a centralized empire like Rome. But to take Canada, like you aspire to one day have one culture. You don't have. It's ass backwards to have one culture, and you say, you know what? Why don't we have multiple cultures? Let's balkanize our country. That's a great idea.
Yeah. That's it. Exactly. And balkanization is the perfect adjective to describe it. And what happens with balkanization is the people don't have solidarity. The electorate doesn't have solidarity. So it serves the ruling class in that aspect too. And you see the factionalized various demographic groups that, like, how can we all get together and change Canada? It's very unlikely politically, that's for sure.
Where do you want to go? We promised we'd only do 1 hour.
We got 10 minutes. There's a couple more comments. Maybe we'll have a look at that and just chat it up. Again, the informal nature of this morning show, I think, is the best feature for me. So we got Squirrel Nuts, loyal viewer. Mass milling the population, brainwashing, MK Ultra. It's all documented for everyone to read and hear. Repeat the lies enough eventually, and they will believe a lie over the truth and reality. Any thoughts?
Yes. What was Goebbels' speech? If you say a lie enough times, loud enough, repeat it enough, people will start to believe it. And we saw it during COVID.
Yeah, that was a Orwellian concept too, introduced in 1984. Just the constant repetition of things make it true. 2 plus 2 is 5. So we also have another squirrel nuts comment. Kearney at another summit for Ukraine illegal war against Russia, saying Europe will lead. Why not Canada lead the world and always someone else instead of us?
Russia, there's certain things going on, like they're ramping up their. This is what pisses me off. During the 2025 election, all the left, they kept saying this was an illegal invasion and NATO is a defensive alliance. NATO is not an offensive alliance. I'm sorry, but if you're building the drones in Germany and you're using NATO as a cover and then giving those drones to Ukraine, what you're asking for is to Russia to attack you so that you can force all of the other NATO countries to invade Russia. This is, I don't buy it. I see through it.
I do too. I don't see us as nation states anymore. I think it's more like commerce districts, and the true power lies above it all in a clandestine class and oligarchy that make these decisions, and they very much want this war with Russia. That just seems obvious to me. Canada, all the corruption in Ukraine too. Like there's local Ukrainian anti-corruption bodies that are investigating themselves and finding this just insane amounts of corruption, embezzlement, all kinds of money going missing. And Canada just announced yesterday another 270 million. We've sent them, I think, to date about $26 billion. Like that's Canada's dying. Look, that would have been our sovereign wealth fund, just what we sent Ukraine, who's not even a NATO ally. I mean, it's crazy. What's going on in the world and what we're being told are two very disparate things. That's for sure.
Money, this concept of money is really sinister because, as you know, I alluded to earlier that we've never lived through a period of scarcity. Like you go to the store, there's no apples because nobody grows apples locally. If you're an apple farmer, whatever they call themselves, grower, you grow 10,000 apples a year. That has meaning. You know how much effort goes into it. You know exactly how much there is. If you start coming up with apple bucks and you just print apple bucks, you're like, all right, let's give Ukraine 50 trillion apple bucks, and nobody has any concept of reality anymore.
Yeah. And it's again, we're multiple generations into this. Like earlier generations, we like to think of people in the past as being less informed, but their intuition for stuff like this, their conception that the government's not their best friend was way more attuned than it is presently. Like I think we've been led this way over multi generations. I think the conditioning to it doesn't just come from the media. It comes very much from our school curriculum. It's not even what they're teaching us as much as what they're not teaching us. So you got kids coming out of graduating out of Canadian high school, and they have no conception of the functional premise of a Westminster parliamentary system. They don't understand how our political system works. And these guys are supposed to vote. And that's by design. They don't have any comprehension how economics work. I don't mean like complex economics and different schools of thought, rudimentary economics, wealth creation. They don't understand any of these things. So of course they can't have a very good take on what to do to resolve any issues we see because they don't understand them.
Have you ever tried to read an economics textbook? Like you read the definitions and it doesn't make any sense. Like savings, investment, like the way that they talk, it's designed specifically to make people not want to read it.
I think so too, man. I really do. And I think this is what, like, I'm a working class guy. I have a lot of working class friends. I have a lot of not working class curiosities. Like I'm a rarity in the working class for sure. But I know how to communicate to these guys, man. And they're not like like you can get through to people. You just got to condense things down. You got to provide analogies. You got to encode it into something that can give them a conception of how things work. And that's what the media was supposed to do. like that it was on them. It's a dereliction of duty on their behalf. This gives me a good point to mention. I have an article I wrote about this. It's called "The Fourth Estate: Dereliction of Duty." It's about the synthetic nature of the media presently in Canada. It's in the article section of my X account. But I think that's one of the biggest thing, and that's what when you and I were talking about doing a show and continuing, like we kind of want to discuss some and introduce some of these ideas and educate people and network with people. And that's why I think we're being deboosted systematically, right? Like they don't want people learning about all these things. They don't want people thinking about things outside of their acceptable parameters. If you and I were on here, Peyman, and we were doing a show where we were exalting Pierre Polyev and saying like we just got to go CPC, and we were culture war grifting on the libs, those dumb libs, it would be all over the place because that's what people want and that's what the algorithm wants to push. You said earlier about the censorship would never necessarily come from the right. It's usually the left. I put a post out on my X account and I said, coming soon to Canada, jailing for social media posts. Like, and I explained it further, but that was the meme I used. And someone quoted, yeah, once the right gets in power, we have to make it illegal for the left to post on social media. And I'm just like, no, that is not the way. You're the same problem. And I had a little back and forth with this individual who's been a longtime follower. And it's just like, man, we're just as capable of it. As long as we continue to tribalize, that propensity for tribalization overwhelms our rational faculties. We'll cut our nose off to spite our face, is what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah, I always say censorship. It's a law. It's a rule, right? And these laws, they're always going to exist. So we've had speech censorship since the beginning of time. It's just normally back when you and I were young that the enforcement came from our parents. The enforcement came from our extended family. It came from the community. Like if I, 30 years ago, if I went into a restaurant, a bar, and I started mocking older woman or a pregnant woman, the censorship would come in the form of me getting my ass kicked. It was always there. It's just now that it's been transferred to the state, just the same way our labor has been transferred to the state through the urban centers. That's what we're trying to fight, but we can't articulate that well because we're just not very good at organizing.
Yeah, and everything's working against us. Really, it's hard for any individual. The stranglehold that the ruling class has over all the avenues of this, like it's like I say, I'm trying to do more on Substack. I'm trying to look at different options now that X is kind of gone. But once these smaller platforms like Substack, once the masses go there, then now the ruling class will regulate it. They will get in there. Elon Musk did not want to censor X again. Just put it that way. This is the richest man in the world. He did not want to do what he's being forced to do, essentially. So I mean, any avenue, like we're using big tech to try to warn people about the dangers of big tech, essentially, and a lot of things. So we need to find a way to be more efficacious with the delivery of this. Maybe organic organizing locally, but in Canada we have the problem that it's a huge country and people are very spread out.
Yeah, and who the hell wants to leave their home? It's easier to just stay in air-conditioned places. All right,
that's absolutely right. Well, that was a good episode, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. I want to take a moment again to appeal to our audience. If you guys could please share the stream. I get the vast majority of my views after the live broadcast, so it still helps us out a lot. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll leave the last words to you, Peyman.
Join JP and myself tomorrow. It'll be on my channel in lay terms. You can go to YouTube, Substack, Rumble. Hopefully we'll be streaming on all three.
Excellent. All right, guys. Cheers.